My parents blew off my birthday for my sister's date night. So I pulled the plug on something they really needed, and believe me, they've been regretting it ever since. Okay, listen, this is a tough one to talk about, even now. Can you imagine having your 25th birthday cancelled, for a first date? The sting was instant, but what my family didn't know was that I was the one bankrolling their entire lives, and I was about to pull the plug on everything. It was September 15th, my 25th birthday, and I woke up in my childhood bedroom. The same room I'd been in for 2 years, ever since I moved back home. Temporary financial difficulties, my parents had called it. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, 25, living at home, yet the primary breadwinner for a family who often forgot I even existed. I went downstairs, half expecting the usual birthday chaos, streamers, my mom's famous chocolate chip pancakes, that special energy. Instead, Mom, Maria, was frantically arranging white roses, and Dad, David, was polishing silver. "Morning, Mom," I said, pouring coffee from the expensive machine I'd bought them last Christmas. "The flowers are beautiful. Are those for tonight?" She barely glanced up. "Oh, yes. These are for Chloe's dinner. We want everything perfect when Julian arrives." Julian Thorne III, the mayor's 28-year-old son, who had recently taken an interest in my 23-year-old sister. Chloe had been on cloud 9 all week since he'd asked her to dinner at the country club. My parents? Equally thrilled, practically seeing dollar signs and social climbing opportunities. "That's nice," I replied, just waiting for someone, anyone, to acknowledge what day it was. "So, what time should I expect everyone for my party tonight?" The question hung heavy in the air. Mom's hands stilled. Dad looked up. And then Chloe appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a cream Chanel dress that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "About that, sweetheart," Mom began, her voice softening in that way she used when she was about to disappoint me. "We've been thinking, and we believe it would be best to postpone your celebration." I set my coffee mug down carefully. The ceramic made a soft, ominous click on the granite countertop. "Postpone it just until next weekend," Dad quickly added. "You understand, don't you? Chloe's dinner with Julian is incredibly important. The Thorns are pillars of this community. And if this relationship develops..." He didn't need to finish. I'd heard variations of that speech my entire life. Chloe was the beautiful one, the charming one, the one who would marry well and elevate the family's social status. I was the practical one, the reliable one, the one who worked 60-hour weeks in corporate finance and handed over most of my paycheck to keep them afloat. "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," Mom continued, returning to her roses, oblivious to the knife twisting in my gut. "We need the house to be absolutely perfect. Julian wants to bring her back here for dessert." Chloe finally spoke, her voice in that sweet, innocent tone that had gotten her out of trouble since childhood. "I'm sure you understand. You've always been so mature. Besides, 25 isn't really a milestone, is it? It's not like you're turning 30 or getting married." The casual cruelty of her words was breathtaking. Not because it was malicious, but because Chloe genuinely didn't see anything wrong. In her world, her needs always came first. "I've already called a caterer," Mom added, sealing the deal. "They're bringing everything here instead. The menu will be more sophisticated for Julian anyway." I just stood there, processing. The caterer. The rental hall I had paid for. The deposit on the celebration I had looked forward to. Not because I needed a party, but because it represented one day where I might be the center of attention in a family that had overlooked me for most of my life. "What about our guests?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady despite the tremor inside me. "Aunt Susan is driving up from Philadelphia. My college friends took time off. Phoebe even flew in from Riverbend City. We'll call everyone," Dad waved dismissively. They'll understand. Family comes first, and Chloe's future is at stake. Chloe's future, always Chloe's future. Never mind that I was the one ensuring we had a roof over our heads. For 2 years, I'd watched my parents dote on Chloe while treating me like a live-in ATM, Chloe's credit card bills, Chloe's car payments, Chloe's designer wardrobe. All subsidized by my salary while she worked part-time at a boutique that was more hobby than career. The house needs to be perfect, Mom stressed again. Chloe, darling, you should go get your hair done. I made you an appointment at that salon downtown. The salon that charged $300 for a cut and style. The salon that would be paid for with money I transferred to their account every month. I watched my family orchestrate the destruction of my birthday with the same enthusiasm they had once put into planning it. The efficiency was remarkable. In 10 minutes, they had dismantled weeks of preparation without a second thought for me. I need to make some calls, I said finally. Oh, good, Mom said, relief in her voice. I knew you'd be understanding. Can you handle calling the guests? I need to focus on getting everything ready here. I nodded and walked back upstairs, closing my door. But I wasn't planning to call my guests. Instead, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop, logging into the online banking system I used to manage not just my finances, but theirs, too. For 18 months, I had been making their mortgage payments. $3,000 every single month, transferred from my account because Dad's small accounting practice wasn't making enough, and Mom's library work barely covered groceries. They'd come to me with tears, saying they might lose the house. I'd stepped in, rearranging my life, moving back home, quietly becoming the financial backbone of a family that seemed to forget I existed whenever something more interesting came along. But as I stared at the upcoming automatic transfer scheduled for tomorrow, September 16th, a different kind of clarity settled over me. They wanted to cancel my birthday for Chloe's date. They thought my feelings were less important than impressing Julian. I clicked into the transfer settings and paused the automatic payment. Then I opened a new browser window and searched for apartments in downtown Riverbend City. It was time for some changes in the Wallace household. Changes that would help my family understand the true value of priorities. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Phoebe, "Can't wait for tonight. Just landed at Riverbend International. Should I head straight to your house?" I smiled as I typed back, "Change of plans. I'll pick you up in an hour. We're going to have a very different kind of celebration." Downstairs, I could hear Mom directing Dad. They were staging our home like a theater set, creating an illusion of effortless elegance, possible only because of my money. But tonight, they would get exactly what they planned for, a perfect evening focused entirely on Chloe. And tomorrow? Tomorrow they would begin to understand what happened when they took the person who held their world together for granted. I closed my laptop and began packing a bag. After all, I had some apartment viewings to schedule. I picked up Phoebe in my reliable Honda Civic, the same car I'd been driving for 6 years while Chloe cruised around in the BMW convertible our parents had leased for her 21st birthday. Phoebe threw her arms around me. "Happy birthday, financial wizard," she exclaimed, using the nickname from college. "I brought you something amazing from Newberry, this boutique chocolatier." As we drove, I told her everything. She listened with that focused attention that reminded me why we were still so close. "Wait," she interrupted. "You've been paying their mortgage for how long?" 18 months, I confirmed. Ever since Dad's business started struggling and Mom cut her hours to help Chloe with her modeling career. Phoebe snorted. Modeling career. The girl who did one local department store catalog. The absurdity struck me. Chloe had done exactly one professional photo shoot, earning maybe $800 total, but somehow that was enough for our parents to justify her reducing her work schedule at the boutique to pursue opportunities. Meanwhile, I pulled 60-hour weeks at Sterling & Company, building a reputation as the go-to analyst for complex corporate restructurings. "Tell me about this job of yours," Phoebe said. "I became a senior analyst last year," I said, a small surge of pride. "I'm the youngest person at the firm to handle major client portfolios independently. My specialty is saving companies from bankruptcy, restructuring debt, finding hidden assets. Ironically, I'm apparently better at saving other people's financial lives than I am at protecting my own." What I didn't tell Phoebe was that I'd been quietly building my own consulting practice on the side. 3 evenings a week and most weekends, I worked with smaller businesses and individuals. Word of mouth had spread. I found genuine satisfaction in helping people understand their options and regain control. "So, you're basically a financial superhero," Phoebe observed as we pulled into the parking garage of the Grand Sterling Hotel. "And your family has no idea." That was the crux of it. My parents saw me as their reliable daughter, always there to clean up messes. They had no concept of my professional reputation, my growing network, or the fact that I'd been building a safety net for myself. They certainly had no idea I had been documenting every financial transaction for 2 years, every mortgage payment, every credit card bill I'd covered, every emergency expense. As a financial professional, I understood the importance of records. As their daughter, I had trusted that documentation would never be necessary. We checked into the hotel and sat in the elegant lobby bar. Phoebe insisted on champagne. "You're going to tell me the whole story," she declared. "Start from the beginning. When did you become the family?" The story went back further than the mortgage. It started in college, when Chloe maxed out a credit card for emergencies only. I covered the minimum payments. The pattern was established: Chloe would create financial chaos, our parents would panic, and I would quietly solve the problem. "The mortgage situation started when Dad lost his biggest client," I explained. Wallace and Rossi Accounting had been handling the books for this mid-sized manufacturing company for 12 years. The company was sold, and Dad lost about 40% of his income overnight. "That's rough," Phoebe acknowledged. "But couldn't he have found other clients?" I sipped my champagne, tasting the bitter irony. "He could have if he'd been willing to adapt. But Dad's been doing business the same way for 20 years. He doesn't understand digital marketing, refuses to learn new software. His remaining clients barely cover his office rent." The real problem was Dad was more interested in maintaining the appearance of success than building a sustainable business. He drove a leased Cadillac he couldn't afford, maintained an expensive office, and spent money on country club memberships that never seemed to produce actual business. "What about your mom?" Phoebe asked. "Mom's always been the enabler," I said, signaling for another round. "She worked full-time when we were younger, but once we were in high school, she wanted to pursue her passion for literature. She got a part-time job at the library, which barely covers groceries, and spends most of her time in book clubs. Her volunteer work was meaningful, but she also developed expensive tastes, organic everything, boutique stores, and a weakness for home decor. So, essentially," Phoebe summarized, "your parents have been living beyond their means for years, and when reality caught up, they turned to you instead of making actual changes." "Exactly. And I enabled it because I thought it was temporary. I thought they would use the breathing room I was providing to get back on their feet. Instead, they used my financial support as permission to continue their unsustainable lifestyle. Worse, they extended that lifestyle to Chloe, who learned money magically appeared when needed." "Tell me about Chloe's date tonight," Phoebe said. "What's so special about this Julian guy?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Julian Thorne III. His father is the mayor. His family owns half the commercial real estate in Willow Creek, and his trust fund is probably worth more than I'll make in my entire career. Chloe met him at some charity auction." "Let me guess," Phoebe said. "Your parents see dollar signs. They see social climbing into the Thorne family since the second date." They imagine themselves at country club events, charity galas, all the circles they've always wanted but could never afford. The cruel irony was that my parents had no idea I already moved in those circles professionally. My work at Sterling and Company brought me into contact with some of the wealthiest families in Connecticut. But because my interactions were professional, not social, my parents couldn't see my success. So tonight, I continued, they're rolling out the red carpet for Julian. Fresh flowers, good china, a menu that costs more than most people spend on groceries in a month. All designed to impress a young man who probably won't even notice the details. Phoebe shook her head. And they canceled your birthday for this performance. They canceled my birthday, I agreed. But they have no idea what else they canceled along with it. I pulled out my phone and showed Phoebe an email from a potential client, a struggling tech startup. The consultation fee alone would cover 3 months of my parents' mortgage. I was planning to take this meeting on Monday, I said, but now I think I'll schedule it for tomorrow instead. After all, I suddenly have a free evening. Phoebe grinned. I love it when you get that look in your eyes. What exactly are you planning? I raised my champagne glass. I'm planning to give my family exactly what they asked for. A perfect evening focused entirely on Chloe's future. But I'm also planning to show them what happens when they take their foundation for granted. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows. In a few hours, my family would be hosting their dinner using money I had provided. Tomorrow, they would begin to understand the difference between foundation and facade. The first sign that something was fundamentally wrong had come 6 months earlier. One cold March evening, I came home from a grueling day at Sterling and Company, looking forward to a quiet dinner. Instead, I found Chloe in the living room, surrounded by shopping bags. She was trying on diamond earrings that caught the chandelier light. Those are beautiful, I'd said. Special occasion. Chloe had looked up with that bright, guileless smile. Julian took me shopping. Well, not exactly together, but he mentioned I have excellent taste. So, I decided to upgrade my jewelry collection. The earrings, I would later discover, cost $3,200. Chloe had charged them to a credit card meant for emergencies. A card whose monthly payments I had been unknowingly covering for the past year. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I logged into my parents' financial accounts, where I was an authorized user to manage their mortgage. What I found was a masterclass in financial irresponsibility. The emergency credit card wasn't the only one. Chloe had acquired 3 additional cards, all linked to my parents' accounts, totaling nearly $47,000. Purchases ranged from ridiculous to absurd: an $1,800 handbag, a $2,400 weekend getaway, a $900 facial. But the credit cards were just the beginning. Dad's business account showed declining revenue he'd hidden for 2 years. Instead of cutting expenses, he'd been taking cash advances and small business loans to maintain an illusion of stability. Mom's spending also escalated. Her organic grocery bills were $400 to $500 a week. She joined an expensive wine club, signed up for premium streaming, and paid for a personal trainer 3 times a week. Each expense was modest, but together they created a hemorrhage of money my parents seemed completely unable to acknowledge. The most disturbing discovery was a file folder in Dad's home office: investment opportunities. Brochures for timeshares, obviously fraudulent crypto schemes, and MLM promotions for overpriced nutritional supplements. Dad had apparently invested $12,000 in various get-rich-quick schemes over 18 months. I spent the next 3 weeks quietly documenting everything. As a financial analyst, I knew the importance of complete information. I created spreadsheets, tracking every expense, payment, and transfer. The picture that emerged was devastating. My parents weren't just struggling. They were on a trajectory toward complete financial ruin. Without my monthly contributions, they would lose the house within 6 months. With my contributions, they were simply delaying the inevitable, making the eventual crash even more catastrophic. But what truly opened my eyes was discovering Chloe's career planning folder on the family computer. Elaborate presentations about her modeling prospects, projected earnings that bore no relationship to reality, budgets for headshots, travel to casting calls in New York and LA, a total of $34,000 for her first year of serious modeling. She'd even researched plastic surgery procedures, just some minor enhancements to make her more competitive. The final straw came when I discovered Chloe had been forging my signature on financial documents. She'd applied for a personal loan using my credit score and employment information, listing me as a co-signer without my knowledge. The loan application had been rejected, thankfully, only because the lender had called me to verify employment. When I confronted Chloe, her response was breathtaking in its casualness. "I knew you wouldn't mind," she'd said, filing her nails. "You're always helping with money anyway. I just thought this would be easier than asking." She genuinely didn't understand why I was upset. In her mind, my resources were family resources, available for her use whenever she needed them. The concept that I might have my own financial goals, my own dreams, had never occurred to her. That conversation had taken place in May. Since then, I had been watching my family with new eyes, documenting not just their financial decisions, but their attitudes. I kept a journal, recording casual comments that revealed how they really saw me. "Allah will handle it," was Mom's response to every financial stress. "She's so good with money," Dad would say. "She doesn't mind," Chloe would declare. They weren't just taking my money. They were taking my agency, my identity, my right to make my own choices. I had become a resource to be managed rather than a person to be respected. The breaking point had been building for months, but I might have continued enabling them indefinitely if not for a conversation I overheard 2 weeks before my birthday. Chloe was on the phone with her friend Ashley discussing Julian. "The timing is perfect," Chloe had said. "Mom and Dad are so desperate for me to marry well that they'll do anything. They're already talking about canceling Allah's birthday if it conflicts with the date. Can you imagine? Like anyone cares about her birthday anyway." Ashley's response was muffled, but Chloe's laugh was crystal clear. "Oh, Allah won't care. She never cares about that stuff. She's too practical to get upset over a party. Besides, this could change our family's entire social status. She should be grateful to contribute to something so important." I had stood frozen in the hallway, listening to my sister dismiss my feelings with such casual cruelty. But what hurt more was the realization that she was probably right about my parents' willingness to sacrifice my birthday. That night, I called my college friend Maya, a private investigator in Boston. I asked her to recommend someone local to help document my family's financial situation with legal precision. I wasn't planning to take them to court, but I wanted records that would be admissible. The investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Detective Ava Kararma, was thorough and discreet. Within 2 weeks, she provided a comprehensive report that confirmed everything I had discovered and revealed several additional problems. My parents had taken out a second mortgage without telling me, using the money to consolidate debt that had since been run up again. They had also borrowed against Dad's life insurance and were behind on IRS payments. "Your family is in serious financial trouble," Detective Kararma had told me. "But more importantly, they're in serious denial. These aren't people who are going to change their behavior voluntarily. They're going to keep spending and borrowing until something forces them to stop." I thanked her and filed her report in my home safe. The irony was, I had become an expert at saving other people's finances while allowing my own family to manipulate and exploit me. I could restructure million-dollar corporate debts, but I couldn't establish healthy boundaries with the people who were supposed to love me most. Now, sitting in the Riverbend City Hotel with Phoebe, watching the sunset, I finally understood what had to happen. My family needed to learn the same lesson I taught my corporate clients: consequences are the only thing that creates lasting change. So, what's the plan? Phoebe asked, refilling our champagne. I smiled, a sense of clarity I hadn't experienced in years. Tomorrow morning, my parents are going to discover their mortgage payment has been rejected. They're going to panic. They're going to call me. And for the first time in my adult life, I'm not going to rush in to fix their problem. And then we'll see how important family priorities really are when the foundation starts to crumble. While my family prepared for Chloe's dinner with Julian Thorne III, I was orchestrating something far more sophisticated than they could have imagined. Phoebe and I spent Saturday evening in my hotel suite, planning what would essentially become a masterclass in strategic financial intervention. You've been thinking about this for a while, haven't you? Phoebe observed, watching me navigate through multiple banking interfaces. Ever since I found Chloe's forged loan application, I admitted, I realized then that this situation would never resolve itself naturally. They needed consequences, not just conversations. The beauty of my plan lay in its simplicity and legality. I wasn't stealing money or manipulating accounts. I was simply withdrawing my own financial support in a strategic sequence that would demonstrate exactly how dependent my family had become on my income. The mortgage payment was just the beginning. Look at this, I said, showing Phoebe a spreadsheet breaking down every expense I had been covering. They think I just helped with the mortgage, but I've been subsidizing their entire lifestyle. Watch what happens when I stop. I had already contacted my insurance agent and removed their vehicles from my policy. Effective Monday morning, they would receive notice that their coverage had lapsed. They'd need new insurance immediately or risk having their licenses suspended. The cost would be nearly double what they had been paying through my group rate. Next, I logged into the property tax system. My parents believed their property taxes were automatically deducted from their mortgage, but that had stopped 6 months ago when they refinanced. I had been paying the taxes separately to prevent penalties. The next payment was due in 10 days, and without it, the town would begin lien proceedings against the house. This is brilliant, Phoebe said. You're not hurting them. You're just removing your subsidies. Exactly. They're going to learn very quickly what their actual cost of living is without my financial support, and they're going to have to make some very difficult decisions about priorities. But the mortgage payment timing was the most crucial. I had deliberately waited until the day after it was due to cancel the automatic transfer. This meant that when the bank processed the payment and found insufficient funds, they would immediately send a notice of default. My parents would have exactly 10 days to bring their account current before the bank could begin foreclosure proceedings. The psychological impact would be devastating. My parents had never missed a mortgage payment. Receiving that first notice would shatter their sense of security in a way no conversation ever could. What about Chloe's car? Phoebe asked. I smiled. Chloe's BMW convertible was financed through a lease I had co-signed and been paying for 2 years. The lease included specific terms about insurance, maintenance, and usage. Chloe had violated several of these terms: 2 speeding tickets, exceeding annual mileage, and minor damage she hadn't reported or repaired. I'm not going to cancel her car payment immediately, I explained. That would be too obvious. Instead, I'm going to let the leasing company discover the violations. They'll demand immediate payment of penalties and damages, plus increased insurance. The total will be about $8,000 due within 30 days. And if they can't pay, the car gets repossessed. Chloe will have to find alternative transportation to her dates with Julian. I had also been paying for Chloe's cell phone, gym membership, subscription boxes, and Amazon Prime. Each would be cancelled systematically over the next 2 weeks, creating a cascade of small inconveniences that would gradually build into a clear picture of exactly how much I had been subsidizing her lifestyle. The most sophisticated part of my plan involved Dad's business. Wallace and Rossi Accounting was hemorrhaging money, but Dad had been hiding this by maintaining an expensive office lease and professional appearances. I had been subsidizing these costs indirectly by covering his personal expenses, allowing him to pour his business income into maintaining an illusion of success. Through my professional network, I learned that several of his clients were considering switching to larger firms. I also discovered 2 of his clients were behind on their own payments to him, creating cash flow problems he had been covering with credit card advances. I've been protecting him from the natural consequences of his business decisions, I told Phoebe. He's been able to make poor choices because he knew I would cover the household expenses. Once I stop doing that, he'll have to choose between maintaining his expensive office image and keeping a roof over his family's head. I had already arranged my own exit strategy through my side consulting practice. I had built relationships with clients asking me to take on larger projects. One client, a tech startup in Riverbend City, offered me a contract position that would pay almost as much as my current salary at Sterling & Company, with flexibility to work remotely and build my own practice. "You're going independent?" Phoebe asked. "I've been planning this transition for 6 months. I have enough savings to cover my expenses for a full year and enough potential clients to build a sustainable practice. I was just waiting for the right moment." That moment had arrived with my cancelled birthday party. The symbolic rejection of my value to the family had finally given me permission to prioritize my own future. I had also been strategic about apartment hunting. The downtown Riverbend City loft I had viewed that afternoon was perfect, close to my new clients, spacious enough for a home office, and available for immediate occupancy. The rent was actually less than what I had been contributing to my parents' household expenses. "When do you move?" Phoebe asked. "I can sign a lease tomorrow. I could be completely moved out by next weekend." The timing was crucial. I wanted to be physically removed from the house before my family fully understood what was happening. I didn't want to be present for the initial panic, the pleading, the attempts to guilt me. I needed distance to maintain my resolve, but I also wanted them to have time to process. If they responded by cutting expenses, finding additional income, and treating me with respect, I would consider resuming some limited financial assistance. If they responded with manipulation, blame, and demands, would know that permanent separation was the only healthy option. "What about Chloe's dinner tonight?" Phoebe asked. I checked my watch. It was nearly 7 o'clock. Julian Thorne III would be arriving at my parents' house soon, expecting a perfectly orchestrated evening. My parents had spent the entire day preparing, using money I had provided. "Tonight they get exactly what they wanted," I said, closing my laptop with satisfaction. A perfect evening focused entirely on Chloe's future prospects. Tomorrow, they start learning about consequences. I had even planned a small gift. Earlier that afternoon, I had arranged for a bottle of expensive champagne to be delivered to the house with a note, "Congratulations on prioritizing what matters most. Love, Allah." My parents would interpret it as gracious acceptance. They had no idea it was actually a farewell gesture. Phoebe raised her own champagne glass. To strategic planning and natural consequences. To finally putting myself first, I replied, feeling lighter than I had in years. Outside, the lights of Riverbend City twinkled like stars, representing a future that was finally completely mine to choose. Sunday morning arrived with the jarring buzz of my phone at 6:04 a.m. I was still in the hotel suite, having enjoyed a peaceful night's sleep. My mother's panicked voice shattered the quiet. "Allah! Thank God you answered. We have an emergency. The bank called saying our mortgage payment was rejected. There must be some mistake with the automatic transfer. Can you check your account and fix this immediately?" I sat up slowly, deliberately. Through the hotel window, the early morning sun cast long shadows, painting everything in golden light. It felt symbolic, the dawn of a new chapter. "Good morning, Mom," I said calmly. "How was Chloe's dinner last night?" "The dinner was wonderful, but this is serious. The bank is saying we have 10 days to bring the account current or they'll start foreclosure. This has to be an error." You've never missed a payment. You're right, I replied, walking to the window. I have never missed a payment. But I also didn't make this month's payment. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear my mother's shocked breathing. In the background, Dad's urgent questions. What do you mean you didn't make the payment? She finally whispered. I mean exactly that. I canceled the automatic transfer yesterday morning. The payment that was supposed to be processed didn't happen because I chose not to make it. But why? Is this about your birthday? I know you were disappointed, but this is our house. You can't just stop paying the mortgage because you're upset about a party. The fact that she still didn't understand was both infuriating and clarifying. This wasn't about a cancelled birthday. It was about years of being taken for granted, exploited, and treated as a financial resource. Put Dad on the phone, I said, and put me on speaker. We need to have a family meeting. I heard rustling footsteps, then Dad's voice, strained with panic. Alla, what's going on? Your mother says you didn't make the mortgage payment. That can't be right. It's completely right, Dad. I also canceled your car insurance, which expires tomorrow. The property taxes are due in 9 days, and I won't be paying those either. Chloe's car lease has some violations that need to be addressed, and her cell phone service will be disconnected on Tuesday. The explosion of voices was immediate and overlapping. Mom asking how I could do this. Dad demanding explanations. Chloe crying in the background about her phone and car. The chaos was exactly what I expected, but experiencing it felt strangely liberating. Let me explain something to all of you, I said, raising my voice to cut through their panic. For the past 18 months, I have been covering approximately $4,800 per month in your expenses. That includes the mortgage, insurance, taxes, and various other costs that you've either forgotten about or never realized I was handling. $4,800. Dad repeated, his voice faint. Every month. I have detailed records of every payment, every transfer, every bill I've covered. I also have documentation of the additional $47,000 in credit card debt Chloe has accumulated, the failed business investments you've made, Dad, and the loans you've taken against the house without telling me. I heard Chloe gasp. How do you know about my credit cards? Because I'm listed as an authorized user. Because I'm a financial analyst who notices when $3,200 diamond earrings appear on statements. Because I've been subsidizing your entire lifestyle while you all pretended I was just helping out occasionally. Mom's voice was shaking. Even if you're upset, you can't just stop paying the mortgage. We'll lose the house. You might lose the house, I agreed. That depends entirely on the choices you make over the next 10 days. You could get second jobs, sell some of Chloe's expensive purchases, take out a loan, or ask your wealthy new friends for help. You have options. You just haven't needed to explore them because I've been enabling your poor financial decisions. This is crazy. Chloe's voice came clearly through the phone. Now you're being vindictive and cruel. All because we postponed your stupid birthday party. The casual dismissal of my feelings, even in the middle of a financial crisis, was the confirmation I needed. Chloe, I said, my voice deadly calm. Your car is going to be repossessed within 30 days unless someone pays $8,000 in penalties for the damage and violated terms. Your credit cards are maxed out on accounts I've been paying minimum balances for. Your phone, your gym membership, your subscription boxes, all cancelled. Your modeling career fund that you've been building with other people's money. That ends today. You can't do this to me. Julian is taking me to dinner at the country club next weekend. I need my car. I need my phone. Then you need to figure out how to pay for them yourself. Or ask Julian for help. Or get a full-time job like most 23-year-olds. You have choices, Chloe. You just haven't had to make them before. Dad tried a different approach. Alla, I understand you're angry, but let's be reasonable. We can discuss changes, maybe set up a formal loan structure with interest, but you can't just pull the rug out from under us without warning. Without warning? I laughed, no humor in it. Dad, I've been warning you for 2 years. Every time I suggested you find new clients instead of depending on my support. Every time I recommended Chloe get a real job instead of pursuing fantasy careers. Every time I pointed out your expenses were unsustainable, you ignored every warning because it was easier to take my money than to make difficult changes. I could hear them conferring, trying to figure out how to handle this. The irony was perfect. They were finally having the urgent financial planning conversation they should have been having for years. What do you want from us? Mom asked, finally. I want you to learn to solve your own problems. I want Chloe to understand that actions have consequences. I want Dad to either make his business profitable or find employment that covers his expenses. I want all of you to treat me like a family member instead of an ATM. And if we do that, you'll start helping again? Dad asked hopefully. Maybe. Or maybe I'll decide that it's time for me to focus on my own future instead of constantly rescuing you from yours. I've accepted a new job, Dad. I'm moving to Riverbend City and I'm starting my own consulting practice. For the first time in my adult life, I'm going to prioritize my own goals. The silence that followed was heavy with shock. They had never considered the possibility that I might have my own ambitions, my own life to build. In their minds, I existed primarily to support their dreams and clean up their mistakes. You're moving out. Mom whispered. I'm moving on, I corrected. There's a difference. You can reach me at this number if you need to discuss truly important matters. But the era of me solving every problem and covering every expense is over. Please, Chloe said, her voice now desperate rather than angry. I'm supposed to see Julian again tomorrow night. I can't show up in Dad's old Honda. What will I tell him? You could tell him the truth, I suggested. That your family has been living beyond your means and you're learning to be more responsible. Or you could ask him to pick you up. Or you could take an Uber. You have choices, Chloe. You just haven't had to make them before. Dad cleared his throat. What about the mortgage payment? Even if we accept everything else, we need time to figure this out. Can you just cover this month while we make arrangements? No, I said simply. You have 10 days to bring the account current. You have the same options that any other family in a financial crisis would have. You can ask relatives for help, take out a personal loan, sell possessions, or find additional income. The only thing you can't do is expect me to continue enabling your irresponsible choices. I could hear crying now. Mom's tears, Chloe's sobs of frustration. But I also heard something else, Dad's voice, quiet and thoughtful, as he began discussing actual solutions with Mom. For the first time in years, they were talking about cutting expenses instead of finding ways to increase their income through my contributions. I love all of you, I said, meaning it despite everything. But I won't sacrifice my future for your comfort anymore. You have 10 days to figure out the mortgage. Everything else gets resolved as you're able to manage it. I have confidence that you'll find a way. You just haven't needed to try before. I ended the call and immediately turned off my phone. Outside, Riverbend City was fully awake now, bustling with Sunday morning activity, people jogging, families heading to brunch, couples walking dogs. All of them living their own lives, pursuing their own goals. For the first time in years, I was about to join them. Phoebe emerged from the bedroom, already dressed and holding 2 cups of coffee. How did it go? Exactly as expected, I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. Panic, blame, desperation, and a complete failure to understand why I'm done enabling them. Any regrets? I considered the question seriously, looking out at the city that was about to become my new home. None at all. For the first time in my adult life, I feel free. By Wednesday morning, the Wallace family's carefully constructed world had begun to collapse in spectacular fashion. I was in my new Riverbend City apartment, surrounded by moving boxes, setting up my home office, when the first wave of consequences crashed over them. Phoebe had stayed through Tuesday to help me move, and we were unpacking kitchen supplies when my phone started buzzing. I had turned it back on for business calls, but the flood of texts from my family painted a vivid picture of their rapidly deteriorating situation. From Mom, insurance company called. Cars aren't covered. Can't drive Chloe to work. Need help immediately. From Dad, the bank wants $3,047 to bring the mortgage current plus late fees. Don't have it. What do we do? From Chloe, my phone got shut off in the middle of a call with Julian. This is humiliating. Fix this now. But the most revealing message came from Dad's business partner, Victor Rossi, who called me directly. Victor and Dad had been running Wallace and Rossi Accounting for 3 years. I need to talk to you about your father's financial situation, Victor said when I returned his call. He's been borrowing money from the business account to cover personal expenses, and now we can't make payroll for our employees. This was news to me. How much has he borrowed? $18,000 over the past 6 months. He kept saying it was temporary, that his daughter was helping, and he'd pay it back soon. But now he's saying you've cut him off, and frankly, the business can't survive this kind of drain. I felt a chill of realization. Dad hadn't just been mismanaging his personal finances. He had been stealing from his business, using my mortgage payments as justification for his theft. Victor, I had no idea about any of this. My father never told me he was taking money. Well, he needs to return it immediately or I'm going to have to dissolve the partnership and report the missing funds. I've got 3 employees who depend on their paychecks, and I won't let them suffer because David can't manage his personal expenses. After hanging up, I sat in my new living room, staring out at the Riverbend City skyline, trying to process the full scope of my father's deception. It wasn't just that he had been irresponsible. He had been actively dishonest. My phone rang again. This time, it was Julian Thorne III himself. Ms. Wallace. His voice was polite but confused. This is Julian Thorne. I believe I've been dating your sister, Chloe. Yes, I know who you are, I replied, curious. I'm calling because Chloe asked me to contact you about some financial difficulties your family is experiencing. She seems to think you might be able to help resolve some issues with her car and phone service. I almost laughed at the audacity. Chloe had actually asked her new boyfriend to call me for financial assistance. Julian, I appreciate you calling, but Chloe's financial problems are her responsibility to solve. I'm no longer involved in managing my family's expenses. There was a pause. I see. Chloe gave me the impression that this was some kind of temporary misunderstanding between siblings. She said you were just upset about a birthday party. Chloe has a tendency to minimize complex situations. The reality is that my family has been living beyond their means for years, and I've decided to stop enabling that behavior. Ah. Julian's tone shifted, becoming more thoughtful. That puts things in a different perspective. Chloe mentioned that her family was well established financially. I gather that's not entirely accurate. I chose my words carefully. I think you should ask Chloe to be more honest with you about her actual circumstances. She's a lovely person, but she's never had to face real financial responsibility. After we hung up, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sympathy. Julian Thorne III wasn't looking for a charity case. He was looking for an equal partner from a stable, successful family. Chloe's deceptions were about to catch up with her. The next call came from my Aunt Susan in Philadelphia, who had driven up for my cancelled birthday and was now staying with my parents. Alla, Aunt Susan said, her voice tight with stress. I need you to understand what's happening here. Your parents are in complete panic. Your mother hasn't stopped crying since Sunday. Your father is talking about declaring bankruptcy. Chloe locked herself in her room and won't come out. What about solutions? I asked. Are they taking any practical steps? Your father went to 3 different banks trying to get a personal loan, but his credit is apparently much worse than anyone realized. Your mother called everyone she knows asking for money, which was humiliating for her. Chloe applied for full-time jobs at 6 different places yesterday. This was progress. For the first time in years, my family was facing reality and taking concrete action. Aunt Susan, they're doing exactly what they should be. These are the steps they should have taken years ago. But they could lose the house. Your childhood home. That's possible, I agreed. It's also possible they'll find a way to save it. But either way, it won't be because I sacrificed my future to enable their poor decisions. Aunt Susan was quiet. I have to ask, are you really prepared to let them lose everything? It was a fair question. I'm prepared to let them face the natural consequences of their choices. If they lose the house, they can rent something smaller. If Chloe loses her car, she can take public transportation. If Dad loses his business, he can find employment that provides steady income. And if they hate you for this, then I'll know that their love was conditional on my willingness to bankrupt myself for their comfort. That evening, I received an unexpected visitor. Chloe appeared at my apartment building, looking disheveled and desperate. The doorman called up, and after a moment's hesitation, I agreed. She looked terrible, her hair unwashed, pulled back in a messy ponytail, jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt instead of designer outfits. Most tellingly, she had obviously been crying. "Can I come up?" she asked when I met her in the lobby. Of course. We rode the elevator in silence. When we reached my apartment, Chloe looked around with obvious surprise at the modern, sophisticated space. "This is really nice," she said quietly. "Thank you. I've been saving for my own place for a long time." We sat in my living room, and for several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, Chloe broke the silence. "Julian broke up with me today." I felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry. What happened?" "He said he didn't appreciate being misled about our family's financial situation. Apparently, when his parents found out our house might be foreclosed on, they told him he should date someone from a more stable background." Chloe's voice was flat, defeated. "He was right to break up with me. I did mislead him. I've been pretending to be someone I'm not for so long that I forgot who I actually am." This was not the conversation I had expected. "Chloe, you're 23. You have time to figure out who you want to be. But I don't know how to be responsible. I don't know how to live within my means. I've never had to try." She looked at me with something approaching respect for the first time in years. "How did you learn all this stuff? How do you manage money and plan for the future and make it look so easy?" "It's not easy," I told her. "Honestly, it requires discipline and sacrifice and making choices about what's truly important. But it's also incredibly freeing to know that you can take care of yourself." Chloe nodded slowly. "I applied for a full-time job at a marketing company today. The salary is only $32,000, but they said if I work hard, I could advance pretty quickly. That's a good start." I also listed all my designer clothes and jewelry on consignment websites. The woman at the shop said I could probably get about $15,000 for everything, maybe more. I felt a surge of pride. These were exactly the kinds of difficult but necessary decisions she needed to make. "What about Mom and Dad?" I asked. Chloe's expression darkened. "Dad told Victor Rossi that he'll pay back the money he borrowed, but he has no idea how. Mom is talking about selling her jewelry and maybe getting a full-time job for the first time in 10 years. They're both angry at you, but they're also starting to realize how much you were doing for us. Are you angry at me? Chloe considered the question seriously. I was. For the first few days, I hated you. I thought you were being cruel and vindictive. But then I started thinking about how I would feel if someone treated me the way we've been treating you. She looked directly at me. We've been terrible to you. We took your money, your support, your sacrifice, and we never even said thank you. We just expected it, like it was something we deserved instead of something you chose to give us. It was the most honest and mature thing I had ever heard my sister say. I don't hate you, Chloe. I never did. I just couldn't continue enabling behavior that was hurting all of us. I know. She stood up to leave. I don't know if Mom and Dad will ever really understand what they did wrong, but I'm going to try to do better. Starting with paying my own bills and cleaning up my own messes. After she left, I sat in my apartment feeling something I hadn't experienced in years, hope for my family's future. Not the future I had been financing, but the future they might build for themselves if they were willing to do the work. Outside, the lights of Riverbend City stretched out like a promise of possibility. For the first time, I thought there might be a chance for genuine healing. 3 months later, on a crisp December morning, I was preparing for the grand opening of Sterling Advisory Group when my phone rang. Caller ID showed my mother's number, but I almost didn't recognize her voice. It's Mom. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. The tentative, respectful tone was completely different. Something fundamental had shifted. Not at all, I replied, setting down promotional materials. How are things going? Better than I expected, actually. I wanted to call and, well, there are some things I need to tell you, things I should have said months ago. I settled into my desk chair, looking out at the Riverbend City business district where I had built my new life. We saved the house, she said first. It took everything we had, and we had to make some major changes, but we brought the mortgage current with 2 days to spare. How did you manage that? Your father sold his Cadillac and bought a used Toyota. I sold all my jewelry except my wedding ring and my mother's pearl necklace. Chloe contributed $12,000 from selling her clothes and accessories. Anne. She paused, her voice catching slightly. I took a full-time position at the regional library system. I'm now the head of their adult literacy program. I felt a surge of genuine pride. Mom, that's wonderful. You always loved that work. I do love it. And the salary is much better than I expected. Between my income and the money your father is finally making from his business, we can actually cover our expenses without. She trailed off. Without my help, I finished gently. Yes. And I need you to know how ashamed I am that it took losing you to make us realize what we had been doing. We weren't just taking your money. We were taking your life, your dreams, your future. We treated you like a resource instead of our daughter. It was the apology I had been waiting to hear for years. What about Dad's business? That's actually going really well. Losing the partnership with Victor was devastating, but it forced your father to completely restructure. He moved to a smaller office, started using modern accounting software, and began offering virtual services to clients outside of Willow Creek. His revenue has actually increased by 30%. This was genuinely surprising. He adapted to digital services. Mom laughed, and I could hear real joy in it. Chloe taught him. She's been working as his part-time marketing coordinator while she finishes her business degree. Did you know she enrolled in night classes? I hadn't. Business administration with a focus on digital marketing. She says she wants to understand how money actually works instead of just spending it. She's completely changed. She's working 40 hours a week at that marketing company, going to school 3 nights a week, and she's been saving money for the first time in her life. The transformation sounded almost too dramatic to believe. But my mother's voice carried conviction. She's been dating someone new, Mom continued. A teacher she met in one of her business classes, Leo. He drives a 10-year-old Honda and lives in a small apartment. And Chloe says she's never been happier. She told me that Julian Thorne was attracted to what he thought our family represented, but Leo likes who she actually is. We talked for another 20 minutes. With each update, layers of old resentment began to dissolve. My family hadn't just survived the financial crisis I created. They had used it to build something more authentic and sustainable. There's one more thing, my mother said. We'd like to invite you to Christmas dinner. Not because we need anything from you, but because we miss you. Because you're our daughter and we love you. And because we want to show you the people we've become. I'd like that, I said, meaning it completely. After we hung up, I sat in my office thinking about the journey that had brought us all to this point. The dramatic confrontation had forced my entire family to confront fundamental truths about responsibility, respect, and authentic relationships. My own transformation had been just as profound. Sterling Advisory Group had grown to a thriving consultancy. My reputation for combining technical expertise with emotional intelligence had spread. More importantly, I had learned to set boundaries and prioritize my own needs without guilt. The apartment in Riverbend City had become a home where I felt genuinely comfortable and secure. I had joined a hiking club, taken up pottery, and started dating a fellow financial consultant. For the first time in my adult life, I was living for myself while still maintaining the capacity to help others when I chose to do so. The irony wasn't lost on me that my family's crisis had ultimately benefited everyone. My parents had discovered strengths they never knew they possessed. Chloe had learned to value authentic relationships over social performance. Dad had modernized his business. Mom had returned to meaningful work. And I had finally claimed the independence and respect I had been unconsciously seeking for years. On Christmas morning, I drove to Willow Creek for the first time since moving out. The house looked smaller, but also warmer and more welcoming. No expensive decorations, just simple, thoughtful touches reflecting their new appreciation for what they could actually afford. Chloe answered the door, and I almost didn't recognize her. She looked healthy and confident, wearing jeans and a sweater, hair in a simple ponytail, genuinely smiling. "Alla," she exclaimed, hugging me tightly. "I can't wait for you to meet Leo. He's in the kitchen helping Dad with the turkey. Fair warning, they're both terrible cooks, but they're having so much fun trying." The scene in the kitchen was exactly as Chloe had described. Dad and a pleasant-looking young man in his late 20s were attempting to coordinate a holiday meal with enthusiastic confidence. "Alla!" Dad called out, wiping his hands on an apron that read, "World's Okayest Cook." Clearly a gift reflecting his new, more realistic self-assessment. "Come settle an argument. Leo says we should baste the turkey every 30 minutes, but the recipe says every hour." "Every 30 minutes, I said, accepting a hug from my father that felt different than any embrace we had shared in years. There was respect in it, gratitude without desperation, and genuine affection not complicated by financial obligation. Dinner was imperfect and delicious. The turkey was slightly dry, the mashed potatoes lumpy. But the conversation was rich with stories about my family's new ventures, challenges they had overcome, and plans for a future they were building together. Leo was thoughtful and funny, with a quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are. He and Chloe clearly adored each other, their relationship based on mutual respect and shared values. "Chloe tells me you're the one who finally taught her family about accountability," Leo said during dessert. "That must have been a difficult decision." "It was necessary," I replied. "But I never imagined it would lead to such positive changes for everyone." "Sometimes people need a crisis to discover what they're really capable of," Mom said quietly. "We certainly did." As the evening wound down, Dad pulled me aside. "I need to say something that's long overdue. What I did to you, taking your money, your support, your sacrifice for granted, was wrong. Not just financially irresponsible, but morally wrong. You deserved better from us. And I'm sorry it took losing you to make me understand that. Thank you for saying that, Dad. I also want you to know that we're not going to ask you for money ever again. Not because we're proud or stubborn, but because we've learned that depending on you is preventing us from becoming the people we needed to be. He handed me an envelope. This is our first payment toward repaying what we owe you. It's not much, only $500, but we're committed to paying back every dollar you spent supporting us, with interest. I looked at the check, feeling emotions I couldn't quite identify. Dad, you don't have to. Yes, we do, he interrupted firmly. We absolutely do. Not because you need the money, but because we need to make this right. Because debts should be repaid. And because our relationship with you should be based on mutual respect, not financial obligation. When I left that evening, I carried with me something I hadn't expected to find: genuine hope for my family's future and real affection for the people they had become. 6 months later, I received another envelope from my parents. This one contained not just their monthly payment, but also a birthday invitation. Not for Chloe this time, but for me. We'd like to throw you a proper birthday celebration, my mother had written. Nothing elaborate or expensive, just family and friends celebrating someone we love and respect, if you're willing to trust us with planning it. I smiled, thinking about how far we had all traveled from that September morning when my birthday had been cancelled for Chloe's date. The woman who had orchestrated such a dramatic intervention felt like a different person now, someone who had been trapped by her own enabling patterns and had needed to break free as much as her family had needed to learn independence. Now looking back, I could see that canceling their mortgage payment hadn't been revenge at all. It had been the greatest gift I could have given my family, the opportunity to discover their own strength, capability, and authentic happiness. And in the process, I had given myself the greatest gift of all, a life that was finally completely mine. What about you? Have you ever had to draw a really hard line with family to save yourself, or even them? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below.